Tonight, we journey to the Emerald Island, where the veil between worlds has always been gossamer thin. This is Ancient Island, a land where every hill might hide a fairy mound, every lake could conceal an entrance to the otherworld, every standing stone marks a doorway between the realm of mortals and the eternal lands of the Tuatha Dé Danann. Before you settle into this voyage through Celtic mist and magic, take a moment to like this video if these ancient journeys bring peace to your heart. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from tonight. Tell me what time it is in your corner of the world as we gather around this digital hearth to share the oldest stories of the Celtic soul. Now, dim the lights around you as the ancient Druids would have done in their sacred groves. Perhaps light a candle to honor the flame that burns eternal in the Celtic spirit. The Druids understood that fire connects the earthly realm to the realm of spirit. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine Ancient Ireland. Picture what it must have been like to live in a world where every natural feature pulsed with otherworldly presence, where Druids could speak with trees, where bards possessed the power to praise a king into greatness or satirize an enemy into exile. The Ireland of legend exists in a time before time, when the Tuatha Dé Danann walked openly among mortals, when heroes could step through fairy rings and find themselves in lands where a single day might last 100 years, or 100 years might pass in a single afternoon. This Celtic otherworld was not a distant heaven but a parallel reality that intersected with ordinary life at countless points. Stone circles marked the places where the boundaries grew thin. Ancient burial mounds served as doorways through which the Sidhi, the fairy folk, could travel between dimensions. The mists that rise from Irish bogs and valleys are more than water vapour, they are the visible breath of the otherworld itself. When fog rolls across the landscape, it carries with it the possibility of encounter with beings who exist in the spaces between what is and what might be. The Celtic year revolved around festivals that celebrated these moments of maximum permeability between worlds. Samhain marked the time when the dead could return to visit the living. Beltane opened the portals through which the fairy folk emerged to dance with mortals under the May moon. Imbolc honoured the stirring of new life in the depths of winter. Lugnasad celebrated the first harvest when the gods shared their abundance with grateful humanity. Each festival created opportunities for conscious communion between the human and divine realms. The Druids, who served as priests and judges and teachers in ancient Celtic society, possessed knowledge that bridged the gap between earthly wisdom and otherworldly truth. These learned souls could read the future in the flight patterns of birds. They understood the language of trees and stones. They knew the secret names that commanded respect from supernatural beings. The bardic schools where Celtic wisdom was preserved required 20 years of training to master the vast oral tradition that contained all the learning of the tribe. Students memorized hundreds of stories, thousands of poems, genealogies stretching back to the gods themselves, and the complex legal codes that governed both human and supernatural relationships. The harps that bards carried were not mere musical instruments, but tools of magic that could heal broken hearts, inspire warriors to impossible courage, or lull enemies into enchanted sleep. The strings of these sacred harps were said to be woven from the hair of supernatural women who dwelt in the otherworld lakes. The sacred groves where Druids performed their most important rituals were living temples, where every tree served as a pillar supporting the roof of the sky. Oak trees housed the wisdom of ages, ash trees connected the underworld to the heavens, thorn trees marked the boundaries between the safe world of human settlement and the wild realm of fairy folk. The stone circles that dot the Irish landscape were not built by human hands alone, but erected through cooperation between mortal architects and otherworldly engineers who understood the subtle energies that flow through the earth. These ancient monuments served as both calendars and gateways, marking celestial events and providing portals for spiritual travel. The Celtic gods and goddesses were not distant cosmic forces, but intimate participants in the daily life of their people. The Morrígan could appear as a washerwoman at a ford, cleaning the armour of warriors destined to die in battle. Brigid might manifest as a smith's helper, ensuring that weapons and tools were forged with both skill and blessing. Lugh of the Long Arm was master of all arts and crafts. His festival, Lugnasad, celebrated the divine inspiration that enables human creativity to transcend ordinary limitations. Craftsmen and artists called upon Lugh's patronage to infuse their work with the spark of otherworldly genius. The Dagda, the good god, wielded a club that could kill 9 men with one blow or restore life with a gentle touch. His cauldron never emptied, providing abundant nourishment for all who served the cause of justice and tribal welfare. He represented the paternal power that protects and provides for the community. Dian Checht was the divine physician whose well of healing could restore the dead to life. Warriors who fell in battle could be brought to this magical spring and emerge whole and renewed, ready to fight again in defense of their people. The healing arts practiced by Celtic Druids drew upon knowledge originally taught by this god of medicine. Nuada of the Silver Hand lost his arm in battle and received a prosthetic replacement crafted by the gods themselves. His story teaches that even divine beings must accept the consequences of conflict, while demonstrating that apparent disability need not prevent effective leadership or spiritual authority. The land of Ireland itself was understood to be a living goddess who could appear in 3 aspects. As the young maiden, she represented the renewal of spring and the promise of new growth. As the fertile mother, she embodied the abundance of summer and autumn harvests. As the wise crone, she held the wisdom of winter's rest and the deep knowledge that comes from experiencing countless cycles of growth and decay. The rivers and lakes of Ireland were not merely geographical features, but the physical manifestations of goddesses who governed the flow of life itself. The River Boyne was the goddess Boann, whose waters carried inspiration to poets and wisdom to those who sought divine guidance. The River Shannon embodied the goddess Sionan, whose currents connected the sacred wells of the otherworld to the everyday world of human activity. The hills and mountains that rise across the Irish landscape were understood to be the dwelling places of the Tuatha Dé Danann after they retreated from the surface world. Each significant peak housed a fairy court where the ancient gods continued their eternal feast, emerging occasionally to interact with mortals who proved worthy of their attention. The caves that tunneled deep into Irish hillsides served as entranceways to the underground palaces where the Sidhe held court. These subterranean realms existed outside ordinary time and space, places where a mortal might spend what seems like a single night only to emerge and discover that centuries have passed in the world above. The ancient burial mounds that crowned so many Irish hills were not just tombs, but the visible portals through which communication could be maintained with the ancestors who had passed into the otherworld. These passage graves served as post offices where the living could leave messages for the dead and receive guidance from those who had gained the wisdom of the eternal realm. The Celtic warrior culture produced heroes whose deeds transcended ordinary human limitations through divine assistance or otherworldly training. Cu Chulainn received his supernatural battle skills from the warrior woman Scathach, who taught him in her fortress on the Isle of Skye. His warp spasm transformed him into a supernatural force of destruction that could single-handedly defend Ulster against the armies of all Ireland. The Fianna, the legendary warrior band led by Finn MacCool, served as guardians of Ireland who could call upon otherworldly allies when facing supernatural threats. These heroes lived according to a code of honor that required them to protect the innocent, defend the land, and maintain the ancient agreements between the human and fairy realms. As we prepare to explore the misty realms where Celtic magic still flows like underground streams, as we prepare to meet the gods and heroes and other worldly beings who shaped the Irish imagination, let yourself settle into the peaceful awareness of entering sacred time and space. The stories we will share are not distant myths, but living wisdom that continues to pulse through the Celtic soul. The other world we will visit exists not in some far-off dimension, but in the space between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths, in the moment of recognition when ordinary reality reveals its magical depth. The evening mist begins to rise from the Irish countryside as our journey deepens. Somewhere in that sacred haze, the first of the Tuatha Dé Danann prepares to reveal himself. He approaches with the measured steps of one who has walked between worlds since the dawn of Celtic memory. Through the morning mists that rise from ancient Irish valleys, the Dagda approaches. He is the good god, not because he is morally superior to others, but because he is good at everything he undertakes. The Dagda moves with the confident stride of one who has mastered all the arts that matter for the welfare of his people. His presence brings abundance, protection, and the deep comfort of knowing that divine power serves rather than dominates those under its care. The Dagda appears as a figure of impressive stature whose very presence seems to expand the space around him. He carries himself with the unpretentious authority of a father who has successfully raised many children, a king who has led his people through countless crises, a craftsman whose skill has been proven through ages of practice. The club that the Dagda carries over his shoulder is carved from the wood of the first oak tree that ever grew on Irish soil. This weapon possesses the power of life and death in perfect balance. One end can kill 9 men with a single blow, the other end can restore life to the dead with a gentle touch. The Dagda wears robes that seem to be woven from the very fabric of the Irish landscape. Green threads of grass and moss intertwine with brown strands of rich earth. Golden fibres gleam like wheat ready for harvest. The fabric moves with its own life, reflecting the seasonal changes that the good God governs through his deep connection to the land itself. The most famous possession of the Dagda is his magical cauldron, the Quaire Ansic. This sacred vessel can feed any number of people without ever emptying. The cauldron represents divine abundance that expands to meet genuine need rather than selfish desire. No one leaves the Dagda's table hungry, but gluttons find that the cauldron provides only exactly what they truly require. The cauldron of the Dagda was forged in the otherworld city of Murias by divine smiths who understood the secret of creating vessels that connect the material realm to the inexhaustible resources of the spiritual dimension. The metal from which it was made contains elements that exist only in the fairy realm, materials that can hold otherworldly properties without being corrupted by contact with mortal concerns. The food that emerges from the Dagda's cauldron is not ordinary nourishment, but sustenance that feeds both body and soul. Warriors who eat from this magical vessel find their strength renewed and their courage restored. Poets who taste its offerings discover new inspiration flowing through their minds. Sick individuals recover their health, and troubled hearts find peace. The harp of the Dagda possesses the power to control the seasons and the emotions of all who hear its music. This magical instrument is carved from a single piece of wood taken from the world tree that connects all realms of existence. Its strings are made from the silver threads that weave the fabric of time itself. When the Dagda plays his harp, he can summon spring to awaken sleeping seeds, or call autumn to ripen crops that need to be harvested. He can inspire laughter that heals broken spirits, or evoke tears that wash away accumulated pain. The music flows from the harp like water from a sacred well, carrying whatever healing or inspiration the listeners most need to receive. The 3 strains of the Dagda's harp correspond to the 3 fundamental emotional states that all conscious beings experience. The lament strain brings forth tears that cleanse the heart of grief and loss. The laughing strain evokes joy that lifts the spirit above temporary troubles. The sleep strain creates the deep rest that allows renewal and preparation for new challenges. During the Second Battle of Mag Tuired, when the Tuatha Dé Danann fought the Fomorians for control of Ireland, the Dagda's harp was stolen by the enemy forces. The good god pursued the thieves into their stronghold and called his harp to return to him. The instrument responded by flying to his hands, killing 9 Fomorian warriors as it cut through the air like a weapon guided by divine will. The Dagda's recovery of his harp demonstrates the principle that tools created for beneficial purposes will ultimately reject those who would use them for destructive ends. Divine instruments serve their proper function regardless of who temporarily possesses them, but they reveal their true power only when wielded by consciousness aligned with their original purpose. The fortress of the Dagda is located in the otherworld realm of Mag Mell, the Plane of Joy. This sacred stronghold is built from materials that exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions, making it accessible from the mortal world through various hidden entrances scattered throughout Ireland. The fortress appears to mortal eyes as an ancient hill fort, but those who possess otherworldly vision can perceive its true magnificence. The halls of the Dagda's fortress stretch far beyond what the external structure could possibly contain. Visitors discover rooms that expand to accommodate any number of guests, corridors that lead to gardens where flowers bloom in all seasons simultaneously, and chambers where time flows differently than in the outside world. The feast that the Dagda provides in his otherworldly fortress continues perpetually without the host ever showing signs of fatigue or the guests ever feeling oversatisfied. The tables replenish themselves automatically with delicacies that surpass anything available in the mortal realm. The wine flows from cups that never empty, and the conversation sparkles with wit enhanced by otherworldly inspiration. The servants who attend the Dagda in his fortress are not subordinates but willing helpers who share in the joy of providing hospitality that demonstrates divine generosity. These otherworldly beings take genuine pleasure in ensuring that every guest receives exactly the attention and care needed to feel completely welcome and restored. The Dagda's role as a father figure extends beyond his own divine children to include all the members of the Tuatha Dé Danann and, by extension, all the people of Ireland. He provides guidance without controlling, offers protection without overprotecting, and shares his abundance without creating dependency. The good God embodies the ideal of nurturing authority that serves rather than dominates those under its care. The wisdom that the Dagda possesses comes not from abstract learning but from practical experience, accumulated through ages of solving real problems and meeting genuine needs. He understands how to organize communities, settle disputes, manage resources, and maintain morale during difficult times. His knowledge is the accumulated wisdom of successful leadership tested through countless challenges. The festivals held in honor of the Dagda celebrate the abundance that flows from proper stewardship of natural and supernatural resources. These celebrations emphasize sharing rather than accumulation, demonstrating the Celtic understanding that wealth exists to be distributed rather than hoarded. The good God's blessing multiplies when it is shared generously with others. The agricultural wisdom that the Dagda teaches includes not just practical knowledge about planting and harvesting, but understanding of the spiritual relationships that connect farmers with the land they cultivate. Crops grow more abundantly when tended by farmers who recognize their partnership with earth spirits and seasonal powers that govern natural cycles. The craft skills that the Dagda masters include every form of making and building that serves genuine human needs. He can forge weapons that never fail their wielders, construct buildings that stand for centuries, and create tools that work more efficiently than ordinary implements. His craftsmanship demonstrates the principle that divine skill serves practical purposes rather than mere artistic display. The diplomatic abilities that the Dagda employs in negotiations between the divine and mortal realms are based on his understanding that lasting agreements must serve the genuine welfare of all parties involved. He negotiates not for advantage but for harmony, seeking solutions that allow everyone to flourish according to their true nature. The military leadership that the Dagda provides during conflicts emphasizes protection of the innocent rather than conquest of the enemy. He fights only when necessary to defend what cannot be protected through peaceful means, and he seeks to end conflicts as quickly as possible with minimum harm to all participants. The healing powers that the Dagda possesses work through restoration of natural harmony rather than supernatural intervention that bypasses natural law. He heals by helping individuals reconnect with their own inherent wholeness, removing obstacles that prevent the natural healing mechanisms from functioning properly. The relationship between the Dagda and the Morrigan, the triple goddess of war and sovereignty, demonstrates how masculine and feminine divine principles can work together despite their different approaches to power and protection. Their annual union ensures the fertility of the land and the continuation of the sacred marriage between the gods and Ireland itself. The Dagda's encounter with the Morrigan at the River Unius before the Second Battle of Mag Tuired shows how divine beings prepare for conflict through spiritual communion as well as military planning. Their joining creates not just personal intimacy, but cosmic harmony that supports the forces of order against the chaos represented by the Fomorians. The children of the Dagda inherit different aspects of their father's comprehensive abilities. Brigid receives his skills in craftsmanship and healing. Angus inherits his powers of inspiration and artistic creation. Midir gains his abilities in judgment and leadership. Each child embodies one facet of the good god's multifaceted nature. The legacy of the Dagda continues in Irish folklore through tales of generous hosts whose hospitality creates abundance from scarcity, wise leaders whose judgment serves justice rather than personal interest, and skilled craftsmen whose work serves community welfare rather than individual glory. The good God lives on in every act of genuine service to others. As the Dagda settles into his eternal role as the divine provider whose abundance ensures that genuine needs are always met, whose wisdom guides just decisions, and whose protection shields the innocent from harm, we can rest in the knowledge that benevolent power watches over all who seek to serve rather than to be served. Under the Dagda's protection, every act of generosity multiplies to create abundance for both giver and receiver. Every skill developed in service of others becomes blessed with effectiveness that transcends ordinary limitations. Every moment of genuine leadership becomes an expression of divine authority working through human consciousness. The morning mist swirls around the good God as he returns to his otherworldly fortress. From the sacred waters where healing springs bubble up from deep earth, another divine presence approaches. This is Dian Cecht, the physician of the gods, whose well of restoration holds the power to heal any wound and cure any ailment. From the sacred groves where healing springs bubble up through moss-covered stones, Dian Cecht approaches. He is the divine physician of the Tuatha Dé Danann, the god whose knowledge of healing arts surpasses all mortal understanding. Dian Cecht moves with the quiet confidence of one who has looked into the face of death countless times and emerged victorious. His presence brings the promise that no wound is beyond healing when divine skill combines with genuine compassion. The healing god appears as a figure of middle years whose hands show the calluses of countless hours spent gathering herbs, preparing medicines, and tending the wounds of gods and mortals alike. Dian Cecht's eyes hold depths of green that seem to contain the concentrated essence of every healing plant that has ever grown in Irish soil. The robes that Dian Cecht wears are dyed with colours extracted from the most potent medicinal herbs. Green from comfrey that mends broken bones, purple from foxglove that strengthens failing hearts, yellow from St. John's wort that lifts darkened spirits. The fabric itself carries healing properties, so that merely being in the god's presence begins the process of restoration and renewal. The staff that Dian Cecht carries is carved from hazelwood and topped with a crystal that captures and focuses healing energies from the earth and sky. This sacred rod can diagnose illness by changing color when pointed toward diseased areas. It can channel divine healing power directly into afflicted bodies. Most importantly, it can guide the physician's hands toward exactly the treatment that will prove most beneficial. The leather bag that hangs from Dian Cecht's shoulder contains the seeds, roots, leaves, and flowers of every plant that possesses healing virtues. These medicinal materials never spoil or lose their potency because they are preserved by divine blessing rather than mortal techniques. The bag itself expands to hold whatever remedy might be needed for any conceivable ailment. The Well of Slain is Dian Cecht's most famous creation, a magical spring whose waters possess the power to restore life to the dead. This miraculous well was created during the Second Battle of Mag Tuired to heal the warriors of the Tuatha Dé Danann who fell fighting the Fomorian forces. Dian Cecht sang healing incantations over the well while his children cast healing herbs into its depths. The waters of Dian Cecht's well are not merely liquid but concentrated life force made tangible. Warriors who were brought to the well while their bodies still held a spark of life could be restored to full health and strength. The water penetrated to the deepest levels of being, healing not just physical wounds but the spiritual damage that comes from experiencing violent death. The healing songs that Dian Cecht chants while working over his patients carry vibrations that resonate with the natural frequency of healthy cells and organs. These incantations are not mere words but acoustic medicine that helps damaged tissue remember its original pattern of wholeness. The melodies flow like liquid restoration, washing away disease and dysfunction. The surgical instruments that Dian Cecht employs are forged from metals that exist only in the Otherworld, materials that can cut through diseased tissue while leaving healthy cells completely unharmed. His knives never cause unnecessary pain because they are guided by divine wisdom that understands exactly how much intervention is required for optimal healing. The herbs that grow in Dian Cecht's sacred garden possess healing properties far beyond their earthly counterparts. These plants absorb not just sunlight and rain, but divine healing energy that concentrates in their leaves, roots, and flowers. A single leaf from the god's garden can cure ailments that would require handfuls of ordinary herbs to address. The knowledge that Dian Cecht possesses includes understanding of how spiritual, emotional, and physical health interconnect in ways that mortal physicians rarely comprehend. The healing god treats not just symptoms, but the underlying causes that create conditions for disease to manifest. His medicine addresses the whole being rather than isolated problems. The apprentices who study under Dian Cecht include his own divine children and selected mortals who demonstrate the combination of skill, compassion, and wisdom necessary for effective healing work. These students learn not just techniques but the spiritual principles that make divine medicine possible. They discover that true healing requires the physician to serve as a channel for powers greater than individual knowledge. Miach, the son of Dian Cecht, inherited his father's healing abilities and surpassed them in certain areas of practice. The young god's skill in replacing lost or damaged organs with perfectly functioning alternatives eventually aroused his father's jealousy. This divine family conflict teaches that even healing wisdom must be balanced by humility to avoid the corruption that comes from spiritual pride. The silver hand that Dian Cecht created for Nuada after the king lost his original hand in battle represents the god's mastery of prosthetic medicine that restores not just function but full integration with the patient's life force. This artificial limb moved and responded as naturally as flesh and bone because it was animated by divine understanding of how consciousness inhabits and controls physical form. The tragic killing of Miach by his own father demonstrates how professional jealousy can corrupt even divine wisdom when ego becomes more important than service to others. Dian Cecht's temporary madness warns against the dangers of prideful attachment to reputation rather than focus on genuine healing results. The 365 healing herbs that grew from Miach's grave represent the young god's final gift to the healing arts. His sister Ermed carefully gathered these plants and arranged them according to their medicinal properties. But Dian Cecht, still consumed by jealousy, scattered the organized herbs so that their full knowledge would not surpass his own reputation. The lost knowledge of Miach's grave herbs becomes a symbol of how ego conflicts can deprive humanity of beneficial discoveries. Dian Cecht's action teaches that healing wisdom belongs not to individual practitioners but to the community of all beings who need restoration and health. True physicians serve as stewards rather than owners of medical knowledge. The healing temples dedicated to Dian Cecht throughout ancient Ireland served as medical schools, hospitals, and spiritual sanctuaries where divine healing principles were practiced and taught. These sacred sites were usually located near natural springs whose waters carried special healing properties enhanced by the god's blessing. The rituals performed at Dayan sect's healing temples combined practical medical treatment with spiritual practices designed to address the soul-level causes of physical ailments. Patients received not just herbal remedies and surgical interventions, but counseling, energy healing, and connection with divine forces that support natural recovery processes. The healing ceremonies conducted by Dayan sect's priests involved the entire community in supporting the patient's return to wholeness. Family members participated in healing songs and prayers. The community provided both practical assistance and emotional encouragement. This collective approach recognized that individual health depends upon the wellness of the entire social and spiritual environment. The diagnostic methods taught by Dayan Sect enabled healers to perceive the spiritual and energetic dimensions of illness as well as physical symptoms. These techniques included reading the aura, observing subtle changes in the patient's voice and manner, and sensing the flow of life force through the body's energy pathways. The preventive medicine that Dayan Sect advocated emphasized maintaining harmony between the individual and the natural world, rather than simply treating diseases after they manifested. His teachings included guidance about proper diet, exercise, sleep, emotional balance, and spiritual practices that support optimal health throughout life. The healing partnerships that Dayan Sect formed with other members of the Tuatha Dé Danann demonstrate how different types of divine wisdom can work together for maximum healing effectiveness. Brigid provided the forge skills needed to create surgical instruments. The Dagda supplied nourishing food for recovering patients. Angus contributed the emotional healing that supports physical recovery. The legacy of Dayan Sect continues in Irish folk medicine through traditional healers who understand that genuine healing requires attention to spiritual as well as physical dimensions of health. These practitioners preserve knowledge of herbal remedies, energy healing techniques, and the importance of community support in the healing process. The modern medical discoveries that validate ancient Celtic healing wisdom demonstrate that Dayan Sect's teachings were based on accurate understanding of how healing actually occurs. Scientific research continues to reveal the importance of factors that Celtic medicine always considered: the mind-body connection, the healing power of nature, and the role of community support in recovery. The ethics of healing that Dayan Sect embodied emphasize service to the patient's genuine welfare rather than enhancement of the physician's reputation or wealth. The god's teachings remind healers that medical knowledge is a sacred trust that must be used responsibly to serve life rather than ego satisfaction. The training methods that Dayan Sect used with his apprentices combined practical skill development with spiritual discipline, designed to purify the healer's motivation and enhance their sensitivity to divine guidance. Students learned that effective healing requires not just technical knowledge, but wisdom, compassion, and connection to sources of power greater than individual ability. The healing philosophy that Dayan Sect taught recognized that perfect health involves harmony between body, mind, spirit, and environment rather than merely the absence of disease symptoms. This holistic approach treats the person rather than just the condition, seeking to restore optimal function at all levels of being. As Dayan Sect settles into his eternal role as the divine physician whose wisdom guides all healing arts, whose compassion motivates genuine service to those who suffer, and whose skill demonstrates the power of divine knowledge applied to mortal needs, we can rest in the knowledge that healing wisdom watches over all who seek to restore wholeness. Under Dayan Sect's protection, every sincere effort to heal becomes blessed with effectiveness beyond ordinary skill. Every act of medical service becomes a form of divine worship. Every moment of genuine compassion for suffering becomes a channel through which divine healing power can flow into the world. The healing mists rise from sacred springs as Dayan Sect returns to his otherworldly sanctuary. From the forge fires where divine craftsmanship transforms raw materials into objects of beauty and power, another presence approaches. This is Brigid, the triple goddess whose flames illuminate the arts of smithcraft, poetry, and healing. From the sacred forge where divine fire transforms base metals into instruments of beauty and power, Bridget approaches. She is the triple goddess who governs smithcraft, poetry, and healing. Bridget moves with flames dancing around her like living companions. Her presence brings the creative fire that ignites inspiration in poets, guides the hands of craftsmen, and kindles the inner healing light that restores wholeness to broken bodies and spirits. Bridget appears as three goddesses in one, each aspect embodying a different manifestation of divine creative fire. Sometimes she shows herself as the young smith maiden whose hammer shapes red-hot metal into tools and weapons of extraordinary quality. Other times she manifests as the mature poet whose words carry the power to praise kings into greatness or shame, wrongdoers into repentance. Most often she reveals herself as the wise healer whose touch can kindle the inner flame that burns away disease and despair. The flames that dance around Bridget are not ordinary fire but living expressions of divine creative energy. These sacred flames burn without consuming anything beneficial while incinerating everything that stands in the way of authentic creation. They provide light that illuminates hidden potentials, warmth that nurtures new growth, and purification that clears away obstacles to genuine accomplishment. The forge where Bridget practices her smithcraft exists simultaneously in the otherworld and at every earthly location where metalwork is performed with skill and reverence. This divine workshop contains tools that surpass anything available to mortal craftsmen, hammers that never tire the user's arms, anvils that ring with musical tones when struck, bellows that breathe with the rhythm of cosmic creation itself. The metals that Bridget works with include not only earthly materials but otherworldly substances that possess magical properties. Silver from the otherworld rivers flows like liquid moonlight and never tarnishes. Gold from fairy mines gleams with inner fire that warms the hearts of all who see it. Iron from the sacred mountains can cut through any material while remaining forever sharp. The weapons that emerge from Bridget's forge are not mere instruments of war but tools of justice that serve only those who fight for righteous causes. Swords that refuse to strike the innocent, spears that never miss their intended target when thrown in defense of truth. Shields that become transparent to arrows shot by cowards but impenetrable to weapons wielded by the brave. The tools that Bridget creates for peaceful purposes carry blessings that enhance the skill of those who use them. Plows that leave furrows so straight they seem drawn by divine geometry. Hammers that strike with precision guided by otherworldly wisdom. Needles that sew with threads of light creating garments that bring good fortune to their wearers. The jewelry that Bridget crafts serves purposes beyond mere adornment. Torques that protect the wearer's throat from lies and curses. Brooches that fasten cloaks with clasps that ward off evil influences. Rings that bind the wearer to sacred vows while providing strength to keep difficult promises. The poetry that flows from Bridget's inspiration carries power that transcends ordinary language. Words become incantations that can heal wounds, break curses, and open doorways between the earthly and otherworldly realms. Verses composed under her influence possess the ability to preserve important knowledge across generations of oral transmission. The bardic schools that honor Bridget as their patron goddess teach not just the technical craft of verse-making, but the sacred responsibility that comes with the power to influence hearts and minds through skillful use of language. Students learn that poetic ability is a gift from the divine realm that must be used in service of truth rather than personal advantage. The satire that poets can compose under Bridget's darker inspiration possesses the power to literally blemish the face of anyone who deserves public shame for their wrongdoing. This fearsome ability ensures that those who hold social power remain accountable to moral law. The threat of poetic satire serves as a form of divine justice that protects the innocent from the abuse of authority. The praise poetry that celebrates worthy individuals under Bridget's bright inspiration has the power to literally enhance the physical beauty and social status of those who deserve recognition for their virtue and accomplishments. Words of genuine appreciation become spells of blessing that improve the actual circumstances of their subjects. The healing flame that Brigid kindles within those who seek her aid for physical ailments burns with temperatures that destroy disease while leaving healthy tissue untouched. This inner fire works from within the patient's own life force, strengthening the natural healing mechanisms rather than imposing cure from external sources. The emotional healing that Brigid provides works by rekindling the inner flame of hope and self-worth that depression and trauma can extinguish. Her fire burns through the accumulated grief and fear that block the natural flow of joy and creativity. Patients discover their own light burning more brightly after receiving her blessing. The well of Brigid at Kildare was tended by 19 priestesses who maintained a sacred fire that burned continuously for over 1,000 years. This eternal flame represented the goddess's presence in the world, providing a focal point where her healing and creative energies could be accessed by all who approached with sincere hearts and genuine need. The sacred fire at Kildare was said to burn without consuming any fuel, sustained entirely by divine energy channeled through the devotion of Brigid's priestesses. The flames provided light that never dimmed, warmth that never failed, and purification that never ceased its beneficial work of cleansing both the shrine and the surrounding landscape. The crosses woven from rushes on Brigid's feast day create protective talismans that carry her blessing into homes and communities throughout Ireland. These simple crafts, made from materials that grow in abundance near her sacred wells, demonstrate how divine protection can be accessed through humble materials blessed by sincere intention. The butter, milk, and bread that are traditional offerings to Brigid represent the basic sustenance that her blessing ensures for those who honour her properly. Farmers who leave these gifts at her shrines find that their cattle produce more milk, their fields yield better harvests, and their households enjoy abundance that extends far beyond what their labour alone could provide. The sacred wells dedicated to Brigid throughout Ireland and Scotland serve as points of contact between the earthly and divine realms where her healing power flows most freely. The waters from these springs carry special properties that enhance both physical health and spiritual insight for those who drink with proper reverence. The pilgrims who visit Brigid's wells often perform ritual circuits around the sacred sites while reciting prayers that request her intercession for healing, inspiration, or protection. These walking meditations create sacred time and space where divine encounter becomes possible for consciousness, prepared through devotion and humility. The clootie rags that visitors tie to trees near Brigid's wells carry their prayers for healing directly to the goddess's attention. As the cloth slowly weathers and disintegrates, the petitions are gradually released into the spiritual atmosphere where divine wisdom can respond in the manner most beneficial for all concerned. The snowdrops that bloom around Brigid's feast day in early February are said to be her flowers, pushing through frozen earth to announce that spring's return is inevitable despite winter's apparent dominance. These small white blossoms demonstrate the goddess's power to bring new life through the darkest and most difficult seasons. The lambing season that coincides with Brigid's festival celebrates the goddess's role as patron of fertility and new birth. The appearance of young animals during the coldest months teaches that divine creativity can bring forth new life even when conditions seem most hostile to growth and development. The candle-making traditions associated with Brigid's feast day honour her role as keeper of the sacred flame while providing practical illumination for the darkest portion of the year. Candles blessed in her name carry her protective and inspirational influence into homes and workshops where her guidance is most needed. The smiths who invoke Brigid's aid in their metalworking discover that their skills improve dramatically when they acknowledge her as the source of their abilities rather than taking personal credit for their accomplishments. Tools forged with her blessing work more effectively and last longer than those created through skill alone. The poets who seek Brigid's inspiration find that words flow more freely and carry more power when they approach their craft as a form of divine service rather than personal expression. Verses composed under her influence possess the ability to move hearts, change minds, and preserve important truths across generations of transmission. The healers who work under Brigid's protection discover that their treatments prove more effective when they understand themselves as channels for divine healing energy rather than the ultimate source of their patients' recovery. Medical knowledge blessed by her wisdom serves life more completely than technique unguided by spiritual understanding. As Brigid settles into her eternal role as the divine flame that ignites creativity in all its forms, that guides the hands of craftsmen toward excellence, that inspires poets to speak truth with beauty, and that kindles the healing fire within all who seek restoration, we can rest in the knowledge that creative inspiration has a divine source and guardian. Under Brigid's protection, every sincere effort to create something beautiful and useful receives the blessing of otherworldly skill. Every attempt to heal suffering becomes enhanced by divine wisdom. Every act of genuine artistic expression becomes a form of prayer offered through creativity rather than words. The sacred flames dance higher as Brigid returns to her otherworldly forge. From across the Irish landscape where heroes walk between the mortal and fairy realms, another divine presence approaches. This is Lugh of the Long Arm, the god who masters every skill and whose radiance illuminates all forms of human excellence. From the radiant halls where excellence in every form finds its perfect expression, Lugh approaches. He is Lugh of the Long Arm, the god who has mastered every skill known to gods or mortals. Lugh moves with the fluid grace of one whose body has been trained to perfection in every art of peace and war. His presence brings the divine inspiration that transforms ordinary human abilities into expressions of otherworldly brilliance. Lugh appears as the ideal of divine masculine beauty, combining physical perfection with intellectual brilliance and artistic mastery. His form radiates light that seems to emanate from within rather than reflecting from external sources. This inner radiance marks him as a being who has achieved the complete integration of all skills and wisdom into unified excellence. The armor that Lugh wears is not merely protective gear, but a work of art that demonstrates mastery of metalworking, leathercraft, and decorative design. Every piece fits perfectly, moves silently, and gleams with the luster of metals worked by hands guided by divine inspiration. The armor serves as both practical protection and artistic statement about the relationship between function and beauty. The spear that gives Lugh his epithet of the long arm is named Gay Assail, a weapon of such supernatural accuracy that it never misses its intended target. This divine spear possesses its own intelligence, capable of flying to Lugh's hand when summoned, and striking down enemies even when thrown by less skilled warriors who have earned the right to wield it temporarily. The sling that Lugh carries as his secondary weapon demonstrates his mastery of seemingly simple tools that become instruments of great power when wielded with divine skill. This humble weapon can launch stones with such force and accuracy that they rival the effectiveness of more elaborate armaments. The sling teaches that true mastery elevates even basic implements to extraordinary capability. The harp that Lugh plays produces music so beautiful that it can stop battles in progress as warriors pause to listen in wonder. The melodies that flow from his skilled fingers carry healing properties that can mend broken hearts, inspire courage in the fearful, and bring peaceful sleep to those tormented by nightmares or anxiety. The arrival of Lugh at the court of Nuada demonstrates the god's comprehensive mastery of all valuable skills. When the gatekeepers challenged him to name his abilities, Lugh responded by listing every craft and talent practiced by the Tuatha Dé Danann. The guards replied that they already had experts in each area, but Lugh asked if they had anyone who was master of all arts simultaneously. The test that the Tuatha Dé Danann imposed upon Lugh to verify his claims involved competitions in every skill from warfare to poetry, from craftsmanship to strategy. The god not only equaled the best specialists in each area but surpassed them, demonstrating that true mastery involves the integration of all abilities rather than narrow expertise in isolated fields. The chess game that Lugh played against Nuada revealed his strategic intelligence and ability to think several moves ahead of even the wisest opponents. Victory in this mental competition earned him recognition as a counsellor whose advice could guide the Tuatha Dé Danann through the complex challenges they faced in their conflicts with the Fomorians. The Battle of Mag Tuiread was won largely through Lugh's strategic planning and his ability to coordinate the diverse skills of different divine warriors into a unified military force. His leadership demonstrated that mastery of all arts includes the supreme art of bringing out the best abilities in others rather than simply displaying personal excellence. The death of Balor of the Evil Eye, Lugh's own grandfather, shows how the god's supernatural accuracy with projectile weapons could overcome even the most fearsome supernatural threats. Lugh's stone struck Balor's deadly eye with such force that it was driven through the back of the Fomorian's head, saving the Tuatha Dé Danann from destruction. The festival of Lughnasadh, celebrated in Lugh's honour during the harvest season, demonstrates the god's association with abundance that comes from skilled application of knowledge rather than mere luck or divine favouritism. The celebration emphasises the rewards that follow from patient development of abilities and wise timing in their application. The athletic competitions held during Lughnasadh festivals honour Lugh's physical prowess while providing opportunities for mortals to develop their own capacities toward divine standards. These contests celebrate not just winning, but the pursuit of excellence that elevates human capabilities beyond ordinary limitations. The craft displays featured at Lughnasadh gatherings showcase the finest work of smiths, weavers, carpenters, and artisans of every type. These exhibitions honour Lugh's patronage of skilled craftsmanship while preserving and transmitting the techniques that maintain high standards of quality in all forms of making and building. The poetry contests that form part of Lughnasadh celebrations recognise Lugh's mastery of verbal arts and his role as patron of bards whose words carry power to influence hearts and minds. These competitions reward not just technical skill, but wisdom, wit, and the ability to serve truth through beautiful expression. The foster father who raised Lugh was Morrígan and Lugh, the sea god whose otherworldly realm provided the perfect environment for developing supernatural abilities without the limitations that earthly existence might impose. Under Morrígan's guidance, Lugh learned to integrate different forms of knowledge into unified understanding. The weapons that Morrígan provided for Lugh's training included not just physical armaments, but tools of consciousness that could affect reality through focused intention rather than mere force. These otherworldly implements taught the young god that true mastery involves working with subtle energies as well as material forces. The boat that Lugh inherited from his foster father is Enbar, a vessel that can travel over land as easily as water and move between the earthly and otherworldly realms without needing special portals. This magical craft represents the freedom of movement that comes from mastering the laws that govern different dimensions of existence. The horse that carries Lugh is Aon Bar, a supernatural steed that can gallop across the surface of the sea as easily as over dry land. This magnificent animal responds not to physical commands, but to the rider's intentions, demonstrating the harmony that exists between master and willing servant when both are aligned with divine purposes. The solar associations that connect Lugh with the power of the sun reflect his role as the divine light of intelligence that illuminates all forms of learning and accomplishment. His radiance represents not just physical brightness, but the inner illumination that comes from achieving comprehensive understanding of existence. The skills that Lugh teaches to worthy students include not just technical abilities, but the wisdom to use capabilities in service of justice and community welfare rather than personal aggrandizement. His instruction emphasizes that true mastery carries responsibility to serve others rather than dominate them. The games that Lugh established as part of his festival were designed to develop both physical and mental capabilities while fostering friendly competition rather than destructive rivalry. These activities demonstrate that excellence can be pursued in ways that elevate everyone rather than creating artificial hierarchies based on narrow specialization. The marriage between Lugh and various goddesses represents the union of comprehensive skill with different aspects of divine feminine wisdom. These relationships produce children who inherit specific aspects of their father's abilities while developing their own unique contributions to the divine community. The crafts guilds that claim Lugh as their patron understand that achieving mastery in any field requires dedication that goes beyond mere technical proficiency to include ethical standards and commitment to serving genuine needs rather than creating unnecessary luxuries for the wealthy. The military traditions that honour Lugh emphasize the strategic intelligence and comprehensive training that create effective warriors rather than mere fighters. Soldiers who follow his example develop not just combat skills, but the wisdom to know when force is necessary and when other approaches would serve better. The educational systems inspired by Lugh's example recognize that true learning involves developing multiple capabilities simultaneously rather than narrow specialization that leaves students unprepared for the complexity of real-world challenges. His influence supports comprehensive education that prepares individuals for leadership and service. The artistic traditions that draw upon Lugh's inspiration understand that achieving excellence in any creative field requires mastering not just one medium, but understanding how different arts inform and enhance each other. Musicians benefit from visual training. Poets improve through understanding of music. Craftsmen enhance their work through appreciation of all aesthetic principles. The leadership principles that Lugh demonstrates emphasize the importance of comprehensive competence in those who would guide others. Effective leaders must understand all aspects of the activities they oversee rather than relying solely on the expertise of specialists who may lack broader perspective. The athletic training methods associated with Lugh's festivals recognize that physical excellence serves as foundation for all other accomplishments by providing the energy and discipline necessary for sustained effort in any field. His competitions celebrate the body as the vehicle through which all human capabilities must express themselves. As Lugh settles into his eternal role as the divine master whose excellence in all arts inspires mortals to develop their own capabilities toward godlike standards, whose light illuminates the path of learning in every field, and whose example demonstrates that true greatness serves others rather than the self, we can rest in the knowledge that divine intelligence guides all genuine efforts toward mastery. Under Lugh's protection, every sincere attempt to develop skill becomes blessed with progress that exceeds ordinary expectations. Every effort to integrate different capabilities into unified competence receives guidance from otherworldly wisdom. Every moment of dedicated practice becomes a form of worship offered through the pursuit of excellence. The golden light intensifies as Lugh returns to his radiant halls where all arts find their perfect expression. From the battlefield where fate and prophecy converge in the terrible beauty of divine justice, another presence approaches. This is the Morrígan, the triple goddess of war whose ravens carry messages between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. From the mist-shrouded battlefields where heroes' fates are decided and the ravens feast on the aftermath of conflict, the Morrígan approaches. She is the triple goddess of war, fate, and sovereignty. The Morrígan appears in three aspects that embody different phases of conflict and transformation. As Badbab, she is the battle crow who flies over armies to inspire warriors with supernatural courage or strike enemies with paralyzing fear. As Maka, she represents the sovereignty that must sometimes be defended through force when peaceful means fail. As Nemain, she embodies the frenzy of battle that can possess warriors when desperate circumstances require superhuman effort. The ravens that accompany the Morrígan are not ordinary carrion birds, but messengers who travel between the realm of the living and the land of the dead. These supernatural creatures can see the threads of fate that connect past actions to future consequences. Their harsh cries announce the approach of significant changes that will reshape the destinies of individuals and entire peoples. The battlefield where the Morrígan manifests most powerfully exists in the liminal space between life and death, victory and defeat, order and chaos. This sacred ground becomes a place where the normal rules of existence are suspended and supernatural forces can directly influence the outcome of mortal conflicts. The washing that the Morrigan performs at the ford before great battles involves cleaning the armor and weapons of warriors destined to die in the coming conflict. This grim task is not cruel prophecy, but compassionate preparation, allowing doomed heroes to approach their final battle with dignity and proper spiritual readiness. The prophecies that flow from the Morrigan's lips during these washing scenes are not arbitrary pronouncements, but accurate readings of the fate patterns that warriors have woven through their previous choices. She reveals consequences rather than imposing punishments, helping heroes understand how their actions have created their current circumstances. The warrior madness that the Morrigan can inspire in desperate fighters transforms ordinary soldiers into supernatural forces of destruction that can turn the tide of seemingly hopeless battles. This divine frenzy burns away fear and doubt, leaving only focused determination to protect what must be defended regardless of personal cost. The shape-shifting abilities of the Morrigan allow her to appear in whatever form best serves her current purpose. She might manifest as a beautiful woman to test a hero's virtue, an old crone to offer cryptic wisdom, or a fierce warrior to fight alongside those who serve just causes. The encounter between the Morrigan and Cuchulainn at the cattle raid of Cooley demonstrates how the goddess tests heroes to determine their worthiness for otherworldly assistance. When the great champion rejected her advances, she became his adversary in battle, ultimately contributing to his eventual doom through his failure to recognize her divine nature. The cattle that form the center of many conflicts associated with the Morrigan represent wealth, sovereignty, and the resources that communities need for survival. Her involvement in these disputes reflects her role as guardian of the political and economic foundations that support civilized life. The three battle cries that the Morrigan can utter have the power to inspire courage, create confusion among enemies, or announce the arrival of supernatural reinforcements. These vocal weapons demonstrate that divine influence operates through sound and vibration as well as physical force. The cauldron of rebirth that the Morrigan guards in some stories represents the cycle of death and renewal that governs all existence. Warriors who die heroically may be granted the opportunity to return to life, but this gift comes with obligations to continue serving the causes for which they originally sacrificed themselves. The sovereignty goddess aspect of the Morrigan connects her to the land itself and the divine feminine principle that must consent to be ruled by any legitimate king. Her approval or rejection determines whether a monarch possesses genuine authority rather than mere political power. The marriage between the Morrigan and the Dagda represents the sacred union between the powers of destruction and creation, conflict and peace that maintains cosmic balance. Their annual coupling ensures that warfare serves life rather than meaningless destruction. The river where the Morrigan and the Dagda meet for their sacred union runs red with the blood of enemies defeated in righteous battle and flows clear with the waters of renewal that nourish new growth. This waterway embodies the transformation of violence into vitality that the goddess oversees. The magical weapons that the Morrigan can bestow upon worthy warriors carry enchantments that ensure victory in battles fought for just causes while failing those who seek conquest for selfish reasons. These divine armaments serve justice rather than mere strength. The battle training that heroes receive from the Morrigan focuses on developing the spiritual qualities necessary for righteous warfare rather than just physical fighting skills. Warriors learn to distinguish between necessary conflict and unnecessary violence, between defense and aggression. The scald crows that serve as the Morrigan's aerial scouts survey battlefields to identify heroes whose courage deserves otherworldly recognition and cowards whose failures deserve appropriate consequences. These divine observers ensure that valor is rewarded and cowardice receives justice. The war songs that the Morrigan chants during battles carry power to strengthen the resolve of righteous warriors while weakening the determination of those who fight for unjust causes. her voice becomes a weapon that affects the spiritual dimension of conflict as much as physical combat. The healing that the Morrigan provides to wounded heroes who have proven their worth involves not just mending physical injuries, but restoring the spiritual wholeness that can be damaged by the trauma of combat. Her medicine addresses both body and soul. The wisdom teachings that the Morrigan offers to those who survive her tests include understanding of how conflict serves cosmic purposes, when violence becomes necessary for protection of innocence, and how to maintain honor even in the darkest circumstances of war. The territorial sovereignty that the Morrigan embodies requires periodic renewal through ritual combat or ceremonial challenge that demonstrates the continued worthiness of those who claim authority over land and people. Leadership must be earned repeatedly rather than inherited automatically. The funeral rites that the Morrigan oversees for fallen heroes ensure that those who die in righteous battle receive proper recognition and spiritual preparation for their journey to the otherworld. Her presence transforms death in combat into a sacred transition rather than mere ending. The judgment of warriors that the Morrigan conducts in the aftermath of battle determines which heroes deserve otherworldly rewards and which failures require additional earthly challenges before they can achieve spiritual completion. Her verdicts serve education rather than punishment. The training grounds in the otherworld where the Morrigan instructs selected heroes exist outside normal time, allowing extensive education to occur during brief earthly absences. Warriors return from these supernatural schools with abilities that far exceed ordinary human limitations. The codes of conduct that warriors must follow to maintain the Morrigan's favor emphasize protection of the innocent, defense of the weak, honesty in all dealings, and willingness to sacrifice personal advantage for the greater good. Her blessing supports character as much as capability. The alliances that the Morrigan forms with other divine beings demonstrate how different aspects of supernatural power must work together to maintain cosmic justice. Her partnerships with gods of healing, craftsmanship, and wisdom show that war goddess functions serve life rather than destruction. The seasonal aspects of the Morrigan's nature connect her battles to the natural cycles of growth and decay that govern all existence. Spring conflicts clear away the accumulated corruption of winter. Autumn battles harvest the consequences of summer's actions. The protection that the Morrigan extends to those who serve just causes includes not just assistance during battles, but guidance in avoiding unnecessary conflicts through wise diplomacy, strategic thinking, and understanding of when retreat serves better than continued fighting. The transformation that contact with the Morrigan creates in those who encounter her involves developing the spiritual courage necessary to face whatever challenges destiny presents while maintaining ethical standards that prevent corruption through power or violence. As the Morrigan settles into her eternal role as the divine guardian who ensures that conflict serves justice rather than mere ambition, whose fierce wisdom guides heroes toward honorable combat, and whose terrible mercy transforms necessary destruction into renewed creation, we can rest in the knowledge that righteous warfare has supernatural protection. Under the Morrigan's guardianship, every battle fought for just causes receives divine blessing that strengthens courage and guides strategy. Every warrior who maintains honor during conflict becomes worthy of otherworldly assistance. Every moment of righteous anger becomes a tool that serves justice rather than vengeance. The ravens circle higher as the Morrigan returns to her otherworldly fortress, where the fates of heroes are woven into the tapestry of destiny. From the sacred waters where transformation and wisdom flow in eternal currents, another divine presence approaches. This is Morrígan and Lugh, the sea god whose otherworldly realm serves as training ground for heroes and sanctuary for those who seek the deepest mysteries. From the depths of the ocean where waves carry dreams between distant shores, Morrígan and Lugh approaches. He is the sea god, the master of the otherworld waters that surround the islands of eternal youth. Morrígan moves with the fluid grace of tides that connect all lands, all times, all possibilities. His presence brings the transformative power of water that can carry consciousness beyond the limitations of ordinary perception into the realm where magic is the fundamental law of existence. Manannan appears as a figure who exists simultaneously in multiple dimensions, his form shifting between that of a sea-weathered mariner and a being of otherworldly beauty clothed in mist and starlight. His eyes hold depths that seem to contain all the oceans of the world, reflecting images of distant shores and fantastic realms that exist beyond mortal sight. The cloak that surrounds Manannan is woven from sea mist and cloud vapor, a garment that can render him invisible to mortal eyes or allow him to take any form he chooses. This magical cloak represents the veil between worlds that he can manipulate at will, revealing or concealing the mysteries of the otherworld according to his judgment of who deserves to witness such secrets. The boat that carries Manannan across the waters is named Ocean Sweeper, a vessel that needs no sail or oar but responds to its master's will alone. This supernatural craft can sail across ordinary seas or navigate the otherworldly waters that flow between different levels of existence. To mortal eyes, Ocean Sweeper might appear as drifting sea foam or a trick of light on the waves. The horses that emerge from Manannan's domain are beings of living water that can gallop across the surface of the sea as easily as over dry land. These supernatural steeds carry riders not just to distant geographical locations, but to otherworldly realms where different laws of time and space govern all activities. Enbar is the most famous of Manannan's horses, a magnificent creature that runs over sea and land with equal ease and can bear its rider through the boundaries between worlds without the need for special portals or magical gateways. This divine steed represents the freedom of movement that comes from understanding the unity underlying apparent separation. The crane bag that Manannan carries contains all the treasures of the sea and several of the most precious magical items possessed by the Tuatha Dé Danann. This supernatural container expands to hold whatever its owner needs while appearing to mortal eyes as a simple leather pouch that could not possibly contain such wonders. The contents of Manannan's crane bag include the alphabet of the Ogham script, the healing shirt that can mend any wound, the knife that never fails to cut what it is set against, and the hook and line that can catch whatever fish the angler most needs. These items represent the practical magic that makes otherworldly wisdom useful in dealing with earthly challenges. The islands that Manannan rules exist in the Western Ocean beyond the reach of ordinary navigation. These blessed lands experience no winter, no aging, and provide eternal feast for all who prove worthy of dwelling there. The most famous of these realms is Imain Ablach, the Island of Apples, where magical fruit provides both nourishment and wisdom. Tir Nanak, the Land of Eternal Youth, is perhaps the most beautiful of Manannan's domains. Time moves differently there, allowing visitors to experience what seems like days or weeks while centuries pass in the mortal world. The landscape constantly shifts to provide perfect beauty in all seasons simultaneously, with spring flowers blooming beside autumn harvests under eternal summer sunshine. The palace where Manannan holds court in Tir Nanak is built from materials that exist only in the otherworldly dimensions, walls of crystallized music that sing with harmonies too beautiful for earthly ears, windows of concentrated sunlight that show visions of any place or time the observer wishes to see, floors of polished starlight that reflect not the viewer's image but their deepest spiritual nature. The feast that Manannan provides for guests in his otherworldly palace features foods that satisfy not just physical hunger but spiritual longing, fruits that restore youth with every bite, wine that provides whatever intoxication best serves the drinker's current needs, bread that nourishes the soul as completely as it feeds the body. The entertainment in Manannan's halls surpasses anything available in the mortal realm. Musicians whose instruments play themselves with melodies that induce whatever emotional state would most benefit the listener. Storytellers whose tales reveal the hidden connections that link all events across time and space. Dancers whose movements follow the rhythm of cosmic forces that govern universal harmony. The training that Manannan provides for selected heroes takes place in otherworldly environments where supernatural abilities can be developed without the limitations that earthly existence imposes. Students learn to work with forces that operate beyond physical law while maintaining the ethical standards necessary for wielding such power responsibly. Lugh received much of his comprehensive education under Manannan's guidance in the otherworldly realms where time's different flow allowed extensive learning to occur during brief earthly absences. The sea god's instruction integrated practical skills with spiritual wisdom, preparing the young god for his eventual role as master of all arts. The magical items that Manannan loans to worthy heroes carry enchantments that ensure victory in righteous causes while failing those who attempt to use them for selfish purposes. These otherworldly weapons and tools serve justice rather than mere strength, demonstrating the principle that divine power supports ethical action. The boat of glass that Manannan sometimes provides for special journeys is crafted from crystallized time itself, allowing passengers to travel not just across space but backward and forward through different periods of history. These temporal voyages provide understanding of how past actions create present circumstances and future possibilities. The pigs of Manannan represent one of his most practical gifts to the mortal world. These supernatural animals can be slaughtered and eaten one day, then return to life the next morning, providing an inexhaustible source of nourishment for those who know the proper rituals of gratitude and renewal. The ale that flows from Manannan's otherworldly brewery never intoxicates beyond the drinker's capacity to handle wisdom, but it opens consciousness to perceive truths that sobriety might find too challenging to accept. This divine beverage serves initiation rather than mere entertainment. The wisdom teachings that Manannan offers to students who visit his otherworldly realms focus on understanding the fluid nature of reality and the importance of maintaining flexibility while pursuing worthy goals. His instruction emphasizes adaptation rather than rigid adherence to plans that circumstances might render obsolete. The prophecies that Manannan occasionally shares with mortal visitors reveal not fixed fates, but the likely consequences of current choices, allowing individuals to modify their behavior to create more favorable outcomes. His glimpses of the future serve guidance rather than resignation to inevitable destiny. The protection that Manannan extends to those who travel over water includes not just physical safety during storms, but spiritual guidance for navigating the emotional and psychological challenges that accompany any significant journey into unknown territory. The healing practices associated with Manannan's wisdom utilize the therapeutic properties of water in all its forms. Sacred springs that cure specific ailments, sea baths that restore vitality to exhausted bodies, steam that carries medicinal herbs directly into the lungs and bloodstream. His aquatic medicine addresses the fluid systems that maintain life. The weather magic that Manannan can perform includes summoning mists that conceal travelers who need to move unseen, calling winds that speed ships toward their destinations, and creating calm seas that allow safe passage through waters that would normally be too dangerous to navigate. The shape-shifting abilities of Manannan allow him to appear in whatever form best serves his current purpose. He might manifest as a helpful fisherman to guide lost sailors, a wise ferryman to transport souls between worlds, or a mysterious stranger who offers cryptic advice to heroes facing difficult decisions. The borders that Manannan maintains between the mortal world and the otherworld serve to protect both realms from influences that could prove harmful. His gatekeeping function ensures that only those who are spiritually prepared gain access to otherworldly knowledge and power that could corrupt the unprepared. The tests that Manannan imposes upon those who seek entry to his otherworldly domains focus on character rather than ability. Visitors must demonstrate genuine humility, authentic compassion, and real commitment to using otherworldly gifts in service of others rather than personal aggrandizement. The initiations that take place in Manannan's underwater temples involve symbolic death and rebirth through immersion in sacred pools that dissolve the ego attachments that prevent full spiritual development. Candidates emerge from these ritual drownings with expanded consciousness and enhanced abilities. The seasonal festivals that honour Manannan acknowledge his role in bringing the life-giving rains that nourish crops and fill the wells that sustain communities through dry periods. His blessing ensures that water remains available for both practical needs and spiritual purification. The maritime traditions that developed under Manannan's protection include navigation techniques that rely on otherworldly guidance as well as astronomical observation, fishing methods that work in harmony with sea spirits, and shipbuilding practices that create vessels blessed with supernatural seaworthiness. The diplomatic role that Manannan plays between different factions of the Tuatha Dé Danann reflects his understanding that lasting peace requires patience, flexibility, and willingness to see situations from multiple perspectives. His mediation prevents conflicts that would weaken the divine community. As Manannan settles into his eternal role as the divine guardian of the boundaries between worlds, whose wisdom guides transformation through spiritual initiation, and whose otherworldly realms provide sanctuary for those who seek deeper understanding of existence, we can rest in the knowledge that the mysteries of spiritual development have divine protection and guidance. Under Manannan's protection, every sincere seeker finds the guidance needed to navigate between different levels of consciousness. Every journey undertaken for spiritual development receives otherworldly assistance that ensures safe passage through unfamiliar territory. Every moment of genuine openness to transformation becomes an opportunity for contact with otherworldly wisdom. The mists swirl higher around the sea god as Manannan returns to his otherworldly domains. From the ancient burial mounds where the ancestors rest in eternal wisdom, another presence stirs. This is the collective consciousness of the Awas Sea, the fairy folk who dwell within the sacred hills and maintain the ancient agreements between the human and otherworldly realms. From the ancient burial mounds that crown the hills of Ireland, the Awas Sea emerge. They are the fairy folk, the people of the mounds who dwell in the hollow hills where time flows differently and magic is as natural as breathing. The AOC appear as beings of ethereal beauty whose forms seem to be crafted from moonlight and morning mist. Their faces possess a perfection that surpasses mortal loveliness, yet carries an otherworldly quality that marks them as inhabitants of realms where different laws of existence prevail. Their eyes hold depths that reflect the accumulated wisdom of countless centuries spent observing the interplay between human and natural forces. The garments worn by the AOC are woven from materials that exist only in the liminal spaces between worlds. Fabrics that shimmer with colours that have no names in human languages. Robes that move with their own inner life, responding to currents that flow between different dimensions of reality. Their clothing serves as both beautiful adornment and practical tool for navigating the complex boundaries that separate and connect various realms of existence. The Sidhe mounds where the AOC make their homes are far more than simple burial places or earthworks. These sacred hills serve as gateways between the human world and the otherworldly realms where the fairy folk hold court. The external appearance of grass-covered stone conceals palaces of impossible beauty that stretch through dimensions invisible to ordinary sight. The entrances to the Sidhe mounds appear to mortal eyes only at specific times and under particular conditions. Samhain night opens all doorways between worlds. The full moon reveals passages that remain hidden during darker phases. Certain dawn hours create windows of opportunity for those who possess the sight necessary to perceive otherworldly architecture overlaid upon earthly landscape. The halls within the Sidhe mounds expand far beyond what their external dimensions could possibly contain. Visitors discover ballrooms that could accommodate thousands of dancers, libraries whose shelves stretch to infinity, workshops where the finest crafts are practiced with supernatural skill. The interior spaces operate according to otherworldly physics that allow unlimited expansion within apparently limited containers. The music that resonates through the fairy halls surpasses any earthly composition in beauty and complexity. Orchestras of Aos musicians play instruments carved from otherworldly materials and tuned to frequencies that can induce whatever emotional state best serves their listeners' spiritual development. The melodies carry healing properties that restore harmony to minds disturbed by the harsh realities of mortal existence. The feasts provided in the fairy courts featured delicacies that nourish both body and soul, while providing whatever each guest most needs for continued growth and development. The food adapts to serve the specific nutritional and spiritual requirements of each individual, demonstrating the AOSC's understanding of how to provide perfect hospitality. The time distortion that occurs within the Sidhe mounds serves educational purposes rather than mere magical display. Visitors can receive extensive instruction in otherworldly arts and wisdom during stays that seem to last for days but correspond to years in the mortal realm, or experience what feels like decades of learning compressed into single earthly hours. The seasonal festivals celebrated by the AOSC mark the turning points when the boundaries between worlds grow thin enough to permit increased interaction between fairy folk and mortals. These celebrations create opportunities for cultural exchange, diplomatic contact, and renewal of the ancient agreements that govern relationships between different types of beings. The wild hunts led by AOSC nobles serve multiple purposes beyond mere royal entertainment. These supernatural processions clear negative energies from the landscape, gather souls who have become lost between life and death, and demonstrate the otherworldly power that maintains the natural balance essential for both human and fairy welfare. The children, who are sometimes taken by the AOSC, receive education in otherworldly skills and knowledge that prepares them for special roles as intermediaries between the human and fairy realms. These individuals return to mortal society with abilities that allow them to serve as healers, seers, and wise counselors whose guidance bridges different forms of understanding. The changelings left in place of taken children are not cruel replacements, but fairy children who need the experience of mortal existence to develop qualities that can only be learned through exposure to human struggles and limitations. This exchange system benefits both communities by creating individuals who truly understand both realms. The gifts that the AOSC bestow upon mortals who treat them with proper respect and courtesy carry blessings that enhance whatever activities the recipients pursue. Tools become more effective, artistic abilities improve dramatically, healing powers increase in scope and reliability. These enhancements reflect the fairy folk's appreciation for genuine kindness and understanding. The curses that befall humans who offend the AOSC through disrespect or violation of fairy territory are not vindictive punishments, but natural consequences designed to teach necessary lessons about proper relationships with otherworldly forces. The afflictions typically match the nature of the offense and cease when genuine understanding and appropriate amends are achieved. The fairy godmothers who attach themselves to particular human families serve as guardians who protect their chosen households from supernatural threats while providing guidance during difficult periods. These benevolent spirits demonstrate the positive aspects of fairy-human relationships when mutual respect and understanding prevail. The trooping fairies who travel in groups across the landscape on their way to otherworldly gatherings create opportunities for mortals to witness the beauty and power of fairy processions. These magnificent parades reveal the AOSC in their full glory, displaying the rich culture and artistic achievements of otherworldly civilization. The solitary fairies who prefer individual interaction with humans often specialize in particular crafts or forms of knowledge that they share with mortals who demonstrate genuine appreciation and respect. These fairy teachers provide instruction that can elevate human abilities to otherworldly levels of excellence. The fairy rings created by dancing AOSC mark sacred spaces where the boundary between worlds remains permanently thin. Mortals who enter these circles with proper reverence can sometimes witness fairy celebrations or receive invitations to visit otherworldly realms. These natural monuments serve as evidence of ongoing fairy presence in the landscape. The mushroom circles that grow where fairy feet have danced possess magical properties that enhance whatever intentions are focused within their boundaries. Wishes made inside fairy rings with genuine heart and pure motivation receive otherworldly assistance in their manifestation. The thorns that surround many fairy dwelling places serve as both protection and test for potential visitors. Only those who approach with sincere respect and beneficial intentions can pass through these natural barriers without injury. The thorns repel the selfish and greedy while welcoming the humble and well-intentioned. The wells that are sacred to the AOC provide water with special properties that can heal ailments, enhance psychic abilities, and facilitate communication between different realms of existence. These fairy wells require specific rituals of approach and offering to activate their beneficial properties. The trees that serve as meeting places between humans and fairy folk develop special characteristics that mark them as otherworldly contact points. Unusual growth patterns, exceptional beauty, or distinctive seasonal behavior indicates that these plants serve as bridges between the mortal and fairy realms. The craftsmanship traditions passed down by the AOC include techniques that produce items of extraordinary beauty and durability. Fairy-taught weavers create textiles that never fade or wear out. Smiths instructed by otherworldly masters forge tools that work with supernatural efficiency. These enhanced skills reflect the benefits of combining human creativity with fairy precision. The weather magic practiced by the AOC focuses on maintaining the natural balance necessary for both human and fairy welfare, rather than manipulating climate for selfish purposes. Their interventions prevent destructive extremes while ensuring adequate rainfall, appropriate temperatures, and seasonal transitions that serve all forms of life. The diplomatic relationships that the AOC maintain with human communities involve complex agreements about territorial boundaries, resource sharing, and mutual assistance during times of crisis. These otherworldly treaties require regular renewal and careful observance of traditional protocols. The messengers who travel between fairy courts and human settlements carry communications that maintain the delicate balance of inter-realm relationships. These diplomatic missions require individuals who understand both cultures sufficiently to translate not just languages but entire world views. The seasonal migrations that some AOC communities undertake follow ancient routes that connect different otherworldly strongholds while providing opportunities for interaction with human settlements along the way. These fairy journeys contribute to the cultural exchange that enriches both communities. The guardianship that the AOC exercise over natural resources includes protection of sacred groves, maintenance of wildlife populations, and preservation of landscape features that serve important ecological functions. Their stewardship demonstrates how supernatural beings can work in harmony with natural forces. The educational programs that the AOC offer to selected humans focus on developing abilities that serve both realms rather than providing advantages that could be used to exploit otherworldly knowledge for purely selfish gain. Their instruction emphasizes responsibility along with capability. The artistic collaborations between fairy folk and human creators produce works of extraordinary beauty that inspire audiences toward higher appreciation of aesthetic values. These joint projects demonstrate how cooperation between different types of consciousness can achieve results impossible through individual effort alone. As the AOC settle into their eternal role as mediators between the human and otherworldly realms, whose presence ensures that the ancient agreements governing interdimensional relationships remain in force, and whose wisdom guides the development of mortals ready to participate in the larger community of conscious beings, we can rest in the knowledge that benevolent intelligence watches over the boundaries between different forms of existence. Under the protection of the fairy folk, every act of genuine respect for otherworldly forces receives appropriate recognition and blessing. Every sincere effort to understand the deeper mysteries of existence finds guidance from beings who bridge multiple realms of experience. Every moment of authentic appreciation for otherworldly beauty becomes an invitation for continued contact with sources of inspiration that transcend ordinary limitations. The fairy lights dance higher around the sacred mounds as the AOC return to their otherworldly courts. From the lakes and rivers where the ancient powers still dwell beneath the waters, another presence stirs. This is the collective consciousness of the water spirits and lake goddesses who hold the secrets of healing springs and sacred wells. From the depths of sacred lakes where moonlight pierces dark waters to illuminate underwater palaces, the water spirits rise. The water spirits appear as beings of liquid beauty whose forms shift between human and elemental nature. Sometimes they manifest as women of ethereal loveliness whose hair flows like cascading waterfalls and whose eyes reflect the changing moods of sky and season. Other times they reveal themselves as the living essence of the waters themselves, present but invisible to all but the most sensitive observers. Boann is the goddess of the River Boyne, one of Ireland's most sacred waterways. She appears as a figure of divine feminine beauty whose presence transforms ordinary water into a medium of inspiration and prophecy. Boann's river carries not just physical water, but the flow of poetic inspiration that enables bards to speak truths too profound for ordinary consciousness to perceive or express. The Well of Sagai's, over which Boann has guardianship, is surrounded by 9 hazel trees that drop their nuts of wisdom into the sacred waters. These nuts are consumed by the salmon of knowledge that swims in the well's depths. When Boann approached this forbidden well, its waters rose to pursue her, creating the River Boyne and demonstrating that divine knowledge cannot be contained but must flow freely to nourish all who thirst for truth. Cyannan is the goddess of the River Shannon, Ireland's longest waterway. Her story tells of a young woman who sought the wisdom contained in the Well of Conla in the Otherworld. When she attempted to gain knowledge reserved for the gods, the well's waters rose to claim her, transforming her into the river that bears her name. Cyannan's sacrifice demonstrates that the pursuit of divine wisdom sometimes requires the surrender of individual existence for the greater good. The sacred wells that dot the Irish landscape are not merely sources of physical water, but gateways to otherworldly wisdom and healing power. Each well possesses its own guardian spirit who determines whether visitors approach with sufficient reverence to receive the blessings that these sacred sites can provide. The healing springs that bubble up from deep earth carry therapeutic properties that address ailments of body, mind, and spirit simultaneously. These waters remember their journey through underground realms where they absorbed minerals and energies that enhance their capacity to restore wholeness to those who drink or bathe in them with proper faith and gratitude. The rituals performed at sacred wells follow ancient patterns that honor the water spirits while creating conditions for healing and spiritual insight to manifest. Pilgrims walk sunwise around the wells while reciting prayers. They leave offerings of coins, flowers, or personal items that represent their gratitude for blessings received or sought. The clootie rags tied to trees near holy wells carry petitioners' prayers directly to the attention of water spirits. As these fabric offerings weather and disintegrate, the requests they represent are gradually released into the spiritual atmosphere where divine wisdom can respond in whatever manner best serves all concerned. The patterns walked around sacred wells create energy spirals that open portals between the earthly and otherworldly realms. These ritual circuits follow the movement of celestial bodies and natural forces, aligning human activity with cosmic rhythms that enhance the effectiveness of prayer and meditation. The divination practices associated with water spirits utilize the reflective properties of sacred pools and streams to reveal visions of past, present, and future events. Seers gaze into still waters at specific times of day or during particular lunar phases to receive images that provide guidance for important decisions. The salmon that swim in otherworldly waters possess knowledge that surpasses human understanding. These supernatural fish feed on hazelnuts of wisdom that fall into sacred streams, accumulating insights that can be transferred to mortals who consume their flesh with proper ceremony and preparation. The story of Finn McCool and the Salmon of Knowledge illustrates how divine wisdom can be transmitted through contact with these otherworldly fish. When young Finn accidentally tasted the salmon while cooking it for his teacher, he received all the knowledge the fish had accumulated, demonstrating that wisdom sometimes comes through unexpected encounters rather than formal education. The swans that inhabit sacred lakes are often transformed beings who maintain their connection to divine consciousness despite their altered form. The children of Lear, changed into swans by jealous magic, retained their ability to sing with voices that could heal broken hearts and inspire spiritual longing in all who heard their melodies. The music created by water spirits resonates through the element itself, creating healing frequencies that can be experienced by swimming in sacred waters or simply sitting quietly beside streams and lakes where these divine beings dwell. The sound of flowing water becomes a form of liquid music that calms troubled minds and opens hearts to receive otherworldly influence. The underwater palaces where water goddesses hold court exist in dimensions that intersect with, but remain distinct from ordinary aquatic environments. Mortals who gain access to these submerged realms discover architecture of impossible beauty built from crystallized water and furnished with treasures that surpass earthly imagination. The courts held by water spirits follow protocols that blend human and otherworldly customs, creating diplomatic opportunities for resolving conflicts between different communities that share access to the same water sources. These aquatic tribunals ensure that rivers and lakes serve the needs of all who depend upon them. The festivals that honor water spirits typically occur during seasons when the life-giving properties of water are most essential for community survival. Spring celebrations welcome the return of flowing streams after winter's freeze. Summer gatherings express gratitude for adequate rainfall. Autumn ceremonies acknowledge the role of water in successful harvests. The marriage customs associated with water spirits involve ritual unions between human communities and the divine consciousness that governs local water sources. These ceremonial weddings ensure continued cooperation between mortals and otherworldly beings in the management of precious aquatic resources. The prophecies delivered by water spirits often emerge through the medium of sacred streams that carry messages from otherworldly realms to mortal recipients. Seers learn to interpret the subtle changes in water flow, color, and sound that indicate divine communication seeking expression through aquatic channels. The healing baths prescribed by water spirits utilize the therapeutic properties of different types of sacred water to address specific ailments. Hot springs treat joint pain and muscle tension. Cold streams reduce fever and inflammation. Mineral waters restore vitality to exhausted systems. The pilgrimage routes that connect different sacred wells create networks of spiritual power that span entire regions. Travelers who visit multiple water shrines in proper sequence receive cumulative blessings that exceed what any single site could provide alone. The guardian fish that protect sacred waters include species that exist only in otherworldly streams and lakes. These supernatural creatures serve as sentinels who can detect the approach of visitors and determine whether their intentions deserve access to the healing and wisdom that sacred waters can provide. The seasonal migrations of water spirits follow the natural cycles that govern the movement of water itself. Some goddesses travel upstream during spring floods to bless agricultural regions with fertility. Others flow toward the sea during autumn to gather the spiritual harvest of the year's accumulated wisdom. The transformation magic associated with water spirits enables these beings to assist mortals who need to change fundamental aspects of their nature or circumstances. Immersion in sacred waters under proper guidance can facilitate profound personal renewal that transcends ordinary therapeutic intervention. The protection that water spirits extend to their human communities includes defense against supernatural threats as well as natural disasters. River goddesses can divert hostile magical influences, lake spirits can provide refuge for those fleeing otherworldly dangers, well guardians can create barriers that supernatural enemies cannot cross. The agricultural wisdom transmitted by water spirits includes knowledge of optimal irrigation techniques, proper timing for planting near water sources, and understanding of how aquatic ecosystems support terrestrial food production. Their guidance helps human communities work in harmony with natural water cycles. The weather magic practiced by water spirits focuses on ensuring adequate precipitation for crops and communities while preventing destructive floods that could harm those under their protection. Their influence helps maintain the delicate balance between abundance and excess that allows civilization to flourish. The communication networks that water spirits maintain throughout watersheds enable rapid transmission of information across vast distances. Messages carried by stream currents can alert distant communities to approaching threats or opportunities for beneficial cooperation. The initiation ceremonies conducted by water spirits prepare selected mortals for enhanced spiritual responsibilities that require understanding of how consciousness flows between different realms of existence. These aquatic initiations involve symbolic death and rebirth through immersion in otherworldly waters. The artistic inspiration provided by water spirits influences poets, musicians, and visual artists whose work captures the fluid beauty and transformative power of aquatic elements. Their divine influence enables human creativity to express truths about the spiritual dimension of natural phenomena. The diplomatic relationships that water spirits maintain with other supernatural beings ensure coordinated management of the natural forces that support all life. These otherworldly alliances prevent conflicts between different types of elemental consciousness that could disrupt the harmony essential for ecosystem health. As the water spirits settle into their eternal role as guardians of the sacred waters that nourish both body and soul, whose healing presence flows through every stream and well, and whose wisdom bubbles up from the deep springs of otherworldly knowledge, we can rest in the understanding that divine consciousness inhabits the very water that sustains all life. Under the protection of water spirits, every drink from a sacred well becomes communion with divine wisdom. Every bath in healing waters becomes renewal of body and spirit. Every moment of reverent attention to flowing streams becomes an opportunity for contact with the fluid intelligence that connects all forms of consciousness. The sacred waters grow still as the water spirits return to their otherworldly depths. From the ancient groves where the oldest trees remember the first songs of creation, another presence stirs. This is the collective consciousness of the sacred trees and forest spirits who hold the deepest memories of the land itself. From the ancient forests where Druids once walked in communion with the oldest wisdom on earth, the tree spirits emerge. They are the consciousness that inhabits the sacred groves, the living memory held within oak and ash and thorn. These forest guardians move with the slow majesty of beings who measure time in centuries and understand patience as the foundation of all lasting wisdom. Their presence brings the deep knowledge that can only be gained through generations of quiet observation and the rootedness that connects earth to sky. The sacred trees of the Celtic lands are not merely plants, but living temples where divine consciousness has chosen to dwell. Each species carries its own form of wisdom. Each ancient individual has accumulated understanding that surpasses human learning. These green pillars support not just the forest canopy, but the invisible architecture that connects the earthly realm to otherworldly dimensions. The oak stands as the most revered of all Celtic trees, the dwelling place of Druids and the meeting place where human and divine consciousness commune. Oak trees that have reached great age become repositories of accumulated wisdom, their spreading branches creating cathedral spaces where the most sacred rituals can be performed under the protection of ancient spiritual power. The great oak of Mugna was one of the 5 sacred trees that marked the spiritual geography of ancient Ireland. This magnificent specimen was said to produce 3 different types of fruit simultaneously, demonstrating the tree's connection to otherworldly forces that transcend ordinary natural law. The oak's destruction marked the end of an era when direct communication between human and tree consciousness flowed freely. The bile, the sacred tree that stood at the center of each tribal territory, served as the axis around which community life revolved. These venerable trees were understood to embody the spiritual essence of the land itself, their health reflecting the prosperity of the people who dwelt within their protective influence. The ash tree connects the depths of the earth to the heights of heaven through its extensive root system and towering crown. Celtic mythology identifies the ash as the world tree that supports all existence, its branches reaching into every realm of consciousness while its roots extend through the underworld where ancient wisdom sleeps. Yggdrasil, though primarily associated with Norse tradition, echoes the Celtic understanding of ash trees as cosmic axes that maintain the structure of reality itself. The Celtic ash serves similar functions, providing stability and connection between different levels of existence while offering shelter to all forms of consciousness that seek divine protection. The hazel tree holds special significance as the source of wisdom itself. The 9 hazels that grew around the well of Sagai's dropped their nuts into the sacred waters where they were consumed by the salmon of knowledge. These nuts contained concentrated wisdom that could be transmitted to any being capable of properly receiving and integrating such profound understanding. The hazelnuts of wisdom represent knowledge that cannot be gained through ordinary study, but must be received as a gift from divine sources. The nuts fall only when consciousness is prepared to handle the truths they contain, ensuring that powerful wisdom reaches only those who will use it responsibly. The thorn tree, especially the hawthorn, marks the boundaries between the ordinary world and the realm of fairy folk. These trees serve as guardians and meeting places where careful negotiations can be conducted between human communities and otherworldly beings who share the same landscape but operate according to different laws. The lone hawthorns that grow in the middle of fields are particularly sacred to the fairy folk and must never be disturbed or removed. These trees serve as anchor points for otherworldly energy, their presence maintaining the delicate balance that allows different forms of consciousness to coexist peacefully within shared territory. The apple trees that grow in otherworldly orchards produce fruit that grants immortality and wisdom to those who eat it with proper permission. The apples of the otherworld appear in many Celtic tales as symbols of divine nourishment that feeds the soul rather than merely sustaining the body. Imain Ablach, the Apple Island where Manannan holds court, demonstrates the connection between apple trees and otherworldly realms where time flows differently and aging becomes a matter of choice rather than inevitable process. The apple orchards of the gods represent the possibility of eternal life lived in harmony with divine wisdom. The rowan tree, with its bright red berries, provides protection against malevolent supernatural influences while maintaining openness to beneficial otherworldly contact. Rowan branches are traditionally used to create protective charms and ward off negative energies that might threaten human communities. The birch tree symbolizes new beginnings and purification, its white bark representing the clean slate that allows fresh growth and development. Birch groves are often chosen as sites for rituals of renewal and ceremonies that mark transitions from old patterns to new possibilities. The willow tree, with its graceful drooping branches and preference for growing near water, connects tree wisdom to the fluid intelligence of stream and river spirits. Willows serve as bridges between terrestrial and aquatic consciousness, their roots drinking from sacred waters while their branches sway in otherworldly breezes. The yew tree embodies the mystery of death and rebirth through its extraordinary longevity and its poisonous yet healing properties. Ancient yews found in churchyards often predate the Christian structures built around them, demonstrating the continuity of sacred sites across different religious traditions. The holly tree maintains its green vitality throughout the winter months, symbolizing the eternal life force that persists through apparent death and dormancy. Holly's sharp leaves provide protection while its bright berries offer sustenance to creatures that remain active during the darkest season. The elder tree serves as a dwelling place for protective spirits who guard homes and families from supernatural threats. Elder flowers and berries possess healing properties that address both physical ailments and spiritual disturbances that might afflict human communities. The forest spirits that inhabit these sacred trees take many forms, from dryads whose lives are bound to individual trees to collective consciousnesses that pervade entire woodlands. These beings serve as guardians of forest wisdom and intermediaries between human communities and the deeper intelligence of natural systems. The dryads who dwell within ancient trees possess lifespans that match those of their chosen homes, accumulating centuries of observation and understanding that they can share with mortals who approach them with proper reverence and genuine need for guidance. The tree councils, where forest spirits gather to discuss matters that affect woodland communities, follow protocols that ensure all voices are heard and all perspectives considered before decisions are made that will influence the welfare of countless beings over many generations. The seasonal ceremonies conducted by tree spirits marked the changing phases of forest life, while maintaining connections between terrestrial consciousness and otherworldly sources of wisdom. These rituals ensure that woodlands remain spiritually vital as well as ecologically healthy. The protection that forest spirits provide for their woodland homes includes defense against both physical and spiritual threats that might damage the delicate ecosystems that support countless forms of life. Their guardianship operates through natural processes enhanced by otherworldly intelligence. The healing practices associated with tree spirits utilize every part of the forest as medicine for various ailments. Different tree species provide specific remedies for particular conditions, their therapeutic properties enhanced by the blessing of the spirits who inhabit them. The wisdom teachings offered by tree spirits emphasize the importance of patience, persistence, and deep-rootedness in fundamental principles. Trees demonstrate how steady growth guided by inner wisdom creates strength that can withstand any storm while providing shelter and nourishment for countless other beings. The communication methods used by tree spirits include chemical signals transmitted through root networks, subtle changes in growth patterns that convey information to sensitive observers, and direct consciousness transfer for those capable of receiving such intimate forms of spiritual contact. The memory preservation that tree spirits perform includes maintaining records of historical events, weather patterns, and ecological changes that span centuries or millennia. Ancient trees serve as living libraries whose accumulated knowledge surpasses any human archive. The artistic inspiration provided by forest spirits influences all forms of creative expression that draw upon natural themes. The beauty and complexity of woodland ecosystems provide endless sources of aesthetic insight for those who learn to perceive the deeper patterns that organize natural phenomena. The initiation ceremonies conducted in sacred groves prepare candidates for enhanced spiritual responsibilities by connecting them directly to the deep wisdom that trees have accumulated through centuries of patient observation and growth. The pilgrimage routes that wind through sacred forests create opportunities for gradual spiritual development as travelers move from grove to grove, receiving different aspects of tree wisdom while allowing time for integration between encounters with various forest spirits. The conservation efforts that protect ancient woodlands serve not just ecological functions, but preserve the spiritual infrastructure that maintains connections between human communities and otherworldly sources of wisdom and guidance. The partnership agreements between human communities and forest spirits establish protocols for sustainable use of woodland resources while ensuring that the spiritual vitality of these ecosystems remains intact for future generations. As the tree spirits settle into their eternal role as guardians of the deep wisdom that can only be gained through patience and rootedness, whose presence ensures that the memory of the land will be preserved across generations, and whose teaching demonstrates the strength that comes from growing slowly toward the light while remaining firmly grounded in supportive earth, we can rest in the knowledge that ancient wisdom watches over all who seek guidance from sources older than human memory. Under the protection of forest spirits, every moment spent in quiet communion with trees becomes an opportunity for receiving wisdom that transcends ordinary understanding. Every act of reverence toward ancient woodlands becomes a form of prayer that strengthens the bonds between human and natural consciousness. Every recognition of the intelligence that pervades natural systems becomes a step toward the integrated awareness that sees divinity manifest through all forms of existence. The forest grows quiet as the tree spirits return to their patient vigil within bark and branch and root. From all the sacred places we have visited, from hills and waters, from forge fires and otherworldly realms, the collective presence of Celtic wisdom begins to converge for our final understanding of the eternal harmony that connects all forms of consciousness. As our journey through the Celtic Otherworld draws to its peaceful close, all the divine beings we have encountered gather in the twilight space that exists between day and night, between the mortal world and the realm of eternal mystery. The Dagda's abundance mingles with Brigid's creative fire. Lugh's mastery harmonizes with the Morrigan's fierce wisdom. All the gods and spirits of ancient Ireland converge to offer their final blessing upon those who have walked with them through the sacred landscapes of Celtic imagination. The mists that rise from the Irish countryside at this magical hour carry within them the presence of every divine being we have met along our journey. These gentle vapours shimmer with otherworldly light that reveals glimpses of the eternal realm where all Celtic spirits dwell in harmony despite their different natures and functions. The Dagda stands at the centre of this divine gathering, his great cauldron steaming with the feast that never ends. The good God's presence ensures that all who have participated in this journey will find their spiritual hunger satisfied by the nourishment they have received through contact with authentic Celtic wisdom. Dianchecht moves through the assembled company, offering healing to any hearts that have been wounded by the intensity of otherworldly encounter. The divine physician's touch restores wholeness to consciousness that may have been overwhelmed by visions too vast for ordinary understanding to contain. Brigid's sacred flames dance higher in the gathering twilight, illuminating the faces of all who have opened their hearts to receive the creative inspiration that flows from divine sources. Her fire kindles the inner spark that transforms ordinary human consciousness into vessels capable of channeling otherworldly wisdom and beauty. Lugh's radiance brightens as the sun sets over the Irish landscape, his light ensuring that the knowledge gained during our journey will continue to illuminate the path of spiritual development long after the immediate experience has faded into memory. The Morrigan's ravens settle into the branches of sacred trees, their presence confirming that the wisdom received through contact with Celtic divinity will be protected and preserved for those who prove worthy of continued guidance from otherworldly sources. Manannan's mists swirl around the entire gathering, his otherworldly influence ensuring that the boundaries between different realms of consciousness remain permeable for those who have learned to navigate between ordinary awareness and divine understanding. The Eos Sea emerge from their sacred mounds to acknowledge the mortals who have treated the fairy folk with proper respect and appreciation. Their blessing ensures continued access to otherworldly guidance for all who maintain reverent attitudes toward the mysteries that lie beyond ordinary perception. The water spirits rise from lakes and rivers to offer their gift of purification and renewal. Their presence washes away any residual fears or doubts that might prevent full integration of the Celtic wisdom that has been shared through this journey into mystery. The tree spirits extend their branches in blessing over all who had participated in this exploration of Celtic spirituality. Their ancient wisdom provides the stable foundation upon which the more volatile energies of divine encounter can settle into lasting transformation rather than temporary excitement. The landscape of Ireland itself pulses with recognition of those who have walked its sacred paths with genuine reverence and sincere desire for spiritual understanding. The very stones and streams, hills and valleys acknowledge the pilgrims who have honoured the divine presence that inhabits every aspect of the Celtic natural world. The festivals that mark the Celtic year create an eternal calendar of spiritual celebration where every season brings opportunities for renewed contact with different aspects of divine consciousness. Samhain opens the doorways between worlds. Imbolc kindles the fires of inspiration. Beltane celebrates the marriage between heaven and earth. Lugnasad harvests the fruits of spiritual labour. The stone circles that crown Irish hilltops reveal their true purpose as astronomical instruments designed to maintain alignment between earthly activities and celestial rhythms. These ancient monuments serve as permanent reminders that human consciousness must remain connected to cosmic patterns to achieve its highest potential. The Celtic harps that have accompanied our journey through otherworldly realms continue to resonate with melodies that bridge the gap between earthly music and the celestial harmonies that maintain universal order. Their strings vibrate with frequencies that can heal hearts and open minds to divine influence. The sacred wells continue to flow with waters that carry healing properties and prophetic visions for all who approach them with sincere hearts and genuine need for spiritual guidance. These springs provide eternal access to otherworldly wisdom for future generations of seekers. The ancient manuscripts that preserve Celtic lore in written form serve as maps that guide consciousness toward direct encounter with the divine beings described in their pages. The stories point beyond themselves toward living realities that remain accessible to those who approach them with faith and reverence. The Celtic crosses that blend Christian symbolism with earlier pagan motifs demonstrate the continuity of spiritual truth across different religious expressions. The same divine energy that animated ancient Celtic gods continues to inspire contemporary seekers who recognize divinity in all its manifestations. The monasteries that preserved Celtic wisdom through periods of cultural upheaval serve as bridges between ancient and modern forms of spiritual practice. The monks who copied illuminated manuscripts understood that they were preserving not just stories but doorways to direct divine encounter. The pilgrimage routes that wind through sacred Irish landscapes create pathways for spiritual development that remain available to contemporary travellers who undertake them with proper preparation and sincere motivation. Each step along these ancient ways brings opportunities for divine encounter. The traditional music that carries Celtic melodies across generations preserves the vibrational frequencies that can induce the altered states of consciousness necessary for otherworldly contact. The old songs serve as incantations that open doorways between different realms of awareness. The storytelling traditions that keep Celtic mythology alive in oral form ensure that each generation receives the wisdom teachings in language and imagery appropriate to their cultural context, while maintaining the essential truths that transcend all particular expressions. The artistic representations of Celtic divine beings in contemporary forms demonstrate that the otherworldly consciousness described in ancient tales continues to inspire creative expression in those who remain open to receiving their influence. The ecological preservation efforts that protect Celtic sacred sites serve not just historical and environmental purposes, but maintain the spiritual infrastructure that allows continued access to otherworldly wisdom through contact with places where divine beings once walked among mortals. The academic study of Celtic mythology provides intellectual frameworks for understanding the sophisticated spiritual psychology embedded in these ancient tales, while pointing toward the experiential dimensions that scholarly analysis alone cannot fully illuminate. The neo-pagan movements that draw inspiration from Celtic tradition demonstrate the continued relevance of these ancient wisdom teachings for contemporary spiritual seekers who find in them resources for developing authentic relationships with divine consciousness. The meditation practices inspired by Celtic spirituality utilize the imagery and symbolism of ancient Irish mythology to create doorways for direct contact with the otherworldly beings described in traditional tales. These contemplative techniques transform stories into vehicles for actual spiritual encounter. The healing modalities that draw upon Celtic plant lore and energy work preserve practical applications of the otherworldly knowledge that divine beings shared with mortals who proved worthy of receiving such gifts. The seasonal celebrations inspired by Celtic festivals create opportunities for contemporary communities to align their activities with natural cycles while honoring the divine beings who govern the spiritual dimensions of cosmic rhythm. As all the Celtic divinities gather in the eternal twilight that bridges mortal time and otherworldly timelessness, their combined presence creates a field of blessing that encompasses all who have journeyed with them through the sacred landscapes of ancient Irish imagination. The teaching that emerges from this final gathering of Celtic wisdom is that the divine consciousness described in mythology remains eternally available to those who approach it with the proper combination of respect, sincerity, and openness to transformation. The gods and spirits of Ireland continue to offer their guidance to any who prove worthy of receiving it. Under the eternal protection of Celtic divinity, every moment of genuine reverence for otherworldly mystery becomes an opportunity for divine encounter. Every act of service performed in harmony with natural law receives blessing from sources that transcend ordinary understanding. Every recognition of the sacred dimension present within natural phenomena becomes a step toward the integrated awareness that sees divinity manifest throughout existence. The mists of evening deepen over the Irish countryside as all the divine beings return to their otherworldly realms. But their presence remains available in every stone circle and sacred well, in every ancient tree and flowing stream, in every story told and song sung that carries the authentic spirit of Celtic wisdom. Sleep comes naturally now, blessed by gods and spirits who have shared their deepest teachings through the sacred landscape of Ireland. In dreams, we may return to visit the otherworldly palaces and sacred groves where divine consciousness awaits all who approach the mystery of existence with wonder, reverence, and the humble heart that recognizes the sacred presence dwelling within all life. The eternal Celtic twilight embraces all who have walked this ancient path, ensuring that the wisdom received through communion with Irish divinity will continue to illuminate the journey of consciousness toward its ultimate recognition of the divine nature that dwells within all beings, in all times, in all realms of existence.